Swami Shri Prabhupada, and the Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki, Jai Srimad Bhagavatam ki. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Bhagavan Swatma Mayaya Gatim Tam Avalokya Saha Saraswatim Upasprushya Vrikshamulam Upavishat. Bhagavan Swatma Mayaya Gatim Tam Avalokya Saha Saraswatim Upasprushya Vrikshamulam Upavishat. Bhagavan Swatma Mayaya Gatim Tam Avalokya Saha Saraswatim Upasprushya Vrikshamulam Upavishat. Bhagavan, the personality of Godhead, Swa-Atma Mayaya, by his internal potency, Gatim, the end, Tam, that, Avalokya, foreseeing, Saha, he, Krishna, Saraswatim, the river Saraswati, Upasprushya, after sipping water, Vrikshamulam, at the foot of a tree, Upavishat, sat down. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Sri Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Translation. The personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna, after forecasting the end of his family by his internal potency, went to the bank of the river Saraswati, sipped water, and sat down underneath a tree. Purport. All the above-mentioned activities of the Yadus and Bhojas were executed by the internal potency of the Lord because he wanted them to be dispatched to their respective abodes after he had finished his mission of descent. They were all his sons and grandsons and were given complete protection by the paternal affection of the Lord. How they could be vanquished in the presence of the Lord is answered in this verse. Everything was done by the Lord himself. Swa-Atma-Mayaya. The Lord's family members were either incarnations of his plenary expansions or demigods from the heavenly planets. And thus before his departure, he separated them by his internal potency. Before being dispatched to their respective abodes, they were sent to the holy place of Prabhat, where they performed pious actions and took food and drink to their heart's content. It was then arranged for them to be sent back to their abodes so that others could see that the powerful Yadu dynasty was no longer in the world. In the previous verse, the word Anugyata, indicating that the whole sequence of events was arranged by the Lord, is significant. These particular pastimes of the Lord are not a manifestation of his external energy or material nature. Such an exhibition of his internal potency is eternal, and therefore one should not conclude that the Yadus and Bhojas died in a drunken state in an ordinary fratricidal war. Sri Jiva Goswami comments on these incidents as magical performances. ॐ ज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकाय चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। नमः ॐ विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामी इति नामिने। नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषशून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपासिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधार श्रीवासादि गौरभक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। Hare Krishna. I'm grateful to be here after almost 2.5 years of the pandemic. And here, one of the most heartbreaking and faith challenging incidents of the Srimad Bhagavatam is being remembered by Uddhava as he is discussing with Vidura. So, today and tomorrow, I will speak broadly on the topic of how to make sense of seemingly senseless suffering. So, the Bhagavatam is a remarkable book in many different ways. And in some cases, it seems to undermine its very purpose. And this is one such pastime that can seem to defeat the entire purpose of the Bhagavatam, which is to glorify Krishna and to inspire us to repose our faith in Krishna and remember Him constantly. So, the incident itself is described in the 11th canto. The Srimad Bhagavatam is, is in many ways very beautifully constructed. It's like if a movie is going to be released, then sometimes before the movie is released, a trailer is released. And then some movies, then they want to make a lot of hype about it. So they release the first trailer, then they release the second trailer, and then finally the movie comes. So, like that, the heart of the Bhagavatam, the core movie is Krishna's pastimes. That comes in the 10th canto. 10th canto is Krishna Leela largely, and 11th canto is Krishna Shiksha. Although Krishna is Krishna's pastime and Krishna's teachings cannot be so radically separated. They are, but broad categorization can be done like that. And this particular pastime is going to appear in the 11th canto. However, the Bhagavatam gives two trailers of Krishna Leela before that. Now, Krishna is, of course, mentioned in every canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. He's recollected, his name is mentioned. And not just Vishnu or Varaha, even name Krishna comes in each canto of the Bhagavatam. No other avatar's reference comes in each canto. But apart from such references, there is the first canto from chapter 7 till around chapter 15, when there is a like a prolonged trailer that Krishna Leela is described, and how Krishna is there with his devotee Arjuna, helping him to win to get to punish Ashwatthama. From that point onwards, how Krishna is there to pacify Kunti, to help Bhishma depart from the world, to see the glorious yajnas, that sacrifices which signified his Digvijay, Yudhishthira's victory in all directions. Krishna is there. And then Krishna's departure is described indirectly. That means the incident itself is not described. Rather, the impact of that incident is described. That is in the 15th chapter is Arjuna's remembrance of Krishna after his departure. So that is the first trailer of Krishna Lila. And the second trailer comes over here. Mm. There is remembrance of Krishna, the remembrance of Krishna's pastimes outside Vrindavan. These chapters will come in this third canto. And here, so we have the description of, not description, we could say, there is like a one verse reference to Krishna's pastimes. And each of these verses, we can say, is like a verbal photograph. Now, if we see a photo, now if we don't know anything about the photo, it's just interesting. But if we know the photo, if we know who the people are there, right, which place that happened, what was the background? Maybe two people are smiling, maybe two people are hugging each other, maybe two people are quarreling with each other. There's a photo of that. So then that photo evokes so much memory. You know, and that photo almost becomes like a gateway to a world of memory, a world of recollection. So, what photos can do through visuals, verses can do through words. So, each of these verse is like a verbal photo of Krishna Lila. When Maitreya, when sorry, Vidura and uh, first Vidura and Akrura discuss, uh, Uddhava, sorry, Vidura and Uddhava discuss, and then Vidura is told to approach Maitreya. So in this time, when the recollection of Krishna is being discussed, so each of those memories are like a way in which they are both getting absorbed in Krishna's pastimes. In fact, first when Vidura questions Uddhava, it is described that just the questions about Krishna take Uddhava to the spiritual world. It is Bhagavatam doesn't qualify it as if he went. It was as if he went to the spiritual world. So he went to the spiritual world, and then he was lost in ecstasy for some time, and then he returned, and then he started answering the questions of Vidura about the well-being of Krishna and the other residents of Dwarka. So while recollecting these various pastimes, now towards the we may call it the tragic denouement, that the what is not a climax, but you could say is like it's a heartbreaking conclusion, the finale. That's what is being hinted at. So in brief, what happens? Srila Prabhupada summarizes this purport is the Dwarkavasis are ruling victoriously, and the glorious, powerful, unparalleled, protected. They have a fortress in water. Mm. Nowadays, now with the Russia-Ukraine war going on, and the fear that the cold winter might become thermonuclearly hot, there is apprehension. If a weapon of mass destruction, what will we do? So uh, there is no place to go and hide if such a weapon is released. So there, whenever there are antagonists, there is always the fear that the opponents may attack and destroy. But Dwarka was situated in the water. It was impregnable because it was surrounded by water from all sides. So no enemy could even reach Dwarka, leave alone destroy its fortified walls, and leave alone hurt or destroy its residents. And yet, it is described that these residents, they passed away in an extremely bewildering way. So they went to Prabhas Kshetra, and it seems Krishna himself has planned everything. So Krishna told them that this is a good occasion. We should go to Prabhas, which is a holy place, and we should perform religious rituals. So they performed those rituals, and after they performed those rituals, then they started celebrating. And when they're celebrating, they started feasting, they started drinking, and then they started quarreling. The Mahabharata describes the quarrel, specifically how it starts. See, the echo of the Mahabharata war comes over here also. In the Mahabharata war, Krishna chose Balramji chose to be neutral simply by going on a pilgrimage. Krishna chose to be neutral by offering something to both sides. So Krishna was on the side of the Pandavas, and his army was on the side of the Kauravas. So his army's main general was Krutavarman. So Krutavarman also sided with the Kauravas because he was with the army. Now, because Krishna was neutral, most other Krishna himself did not fight in the Balram. Most of the Yadu warriors, principal warriors, they did not fight. But Satyaki was a Yadu prince, and he was a student of Arjuna, not a formal disciple. He had studied in Drona's Gurukul also, but it's like we may go to a Gurukul, but in a Gurukul also there are senior students and younger students. Sometimes the senior students teach the younger students. So like that, Satyaki had learned in Drona's Gurukul, but he also considered Arjuna to be his teacher. So Satyaki was on the side of the Pandavas. And during the fight, there were quite a few things that happened which were ethically questionable. Now, of course, the ethics can be explained, but there was the time when Drona entered into meditation, not willing to fight, and in a rush of blood, Drishtadyumna rushed forward and lopped off the head of Drona. Now, this was not a cold blooded plan. The plan of Arjuna was as soon as Drona would lower his weapons, then he would arrest Drona and put him in house arrest till the war got over. But Drishtadyumna, although Arjuna forbade him, other warriors forbade him, but he just rushed forward and lopped off his head. And that almost triggered a civil war among the Pandava forces. Arjuna was furious and so was Satyaki. How could you kill our guru like this? He was your guru also. And Drishtadyumna was brazen. Oh, just see what he was doing. He was destroying our army. He had sided with Duryodhana, who had dishonored your own wife in public. How can you support such a person? And when they were quarreling at that time, Ashwatthama, Drona's son, attacked. And then they had to, because of the common enemy, they put the differences aside. But here, Krutavarman, in a drunken spell, one of the things that alcohol does is that it lowers our inhibitions. Now, sometimes it can be good, people can share their heart, but sometimes it can be bad. Many times it can be bad. Because once the inhibitions are lowered, we may speak things which can be very, very damaging. So he accused Satyaki. He says, what kind of disciple are you? You watched on passively as your own guru was killed. And Satyaki lashed back at Krutavarman. Krutavarman and Krupa were the two people who were there with Ashwatthama when Ashwatthama at night had slaughtered the entire Kaurava Pandava army. And when whoever the Pandava army had been sleeping, and Ashwatthama felt that my father and guru was also unconscious. He was not in external consciousness when you lopped off their head. So I will kill you while sleeping. Okay, maybe there's a twisted logic to that. But if at all there is that logic, he should have killed the one person who was responsible, right? Drishtadyumna. But no, he slaughtered the entire army. And those who could wake up and somehow escape from Ashwatthama, when they came out of their camp, Krutavarman and Kripa were there and they shot all of them down mercilessly. So Satyaki lashed out at Krutavarman. And he said, oh, what kind of coward are you? When soldiers were fleeing, you killed them. And you didn't stop Ashwatthama when he was slaughtering people who were thousands and thousands of soldiers who were sleeping. So both of them started lashing accusations at each other. And those accusations soon went forward and escalated to a fight. And now they had not gone as warriors to fight for a war. So they were looking around. When they got angry, generally we may throw words at others. If we're very angry, we may throw punches at others. If we're really angry, we may look for something that will hurt the other person more. So they looked around and they saw some grass. Now this grass was not ordinary grass. It was almost like branches, thick grass. Like we have sugar cane, like that kind of grass was there. So they picked it up and they started hitting each other. Now this grass was almost like iron, and it started hitting each other. Just one, two blows, and the other person just not knocked out, but just killed. And as one side saw that they had killed the other person, the other said, "How dare you do like this?" They attacked, and it's like the entire dynasty was wiped out within less than an hour. It was completely shocking. And all along this, Krishna and Balaram, it seems that they were trying to stop all these warriors from fighting, but even they couldn't stop. And then they just retreated. And here it is described that Krishna Upavishat, he came to the banks of Saraswati River and he sat down and he sipped water. It is almost as if Krishna was preparing for his departure. So it's like when we do something sacred, we sip water and we do Achman. So Krishna was doing Achman. So he was preparing for his final journey. Now, at this point, when this pastime is being recollected and described, Bhagwan Swaatma Mayaya, by his own internal potency, this happened. So, what does this mean? There are multiple questions that come up. First of all, is why did they get drunk like this? Why did they attack each other so brutally? How could Krishna not stop them? Why did Krishna even let all this happen? And to understand the answer to these questions, we need to look at the broader context of the Bhagavatam. Now, we may see parallels to this even in our own lives, sometimes in our own communities. Sometimes devotees start fighting with each other. And when devotees start fighting with each other, sometimes they start hurling accusations at each other. We may not physically attack each other, but sometimes we may say, you are a deviant, you have no faith in Srila Prabhupada, you are like this, you are like that. And sometimes the accusations can be quite brutal. And this kind of fights happen. And sometimes they simply two senior devotees and they are quarreling and they're fighting. And sometimes it plays out in public. Can be very confused. What is going on over here? This doesn't seem to make sense. And sometimes circumstances seem to work out that there's a small misunderstanding, it seems to escalate. And if you try to look at the issue is not very big, but the conflict becomes huge. So that kind of bloodbath, if not at a physical level, but at a verbal level, and words can actually hurt the heart much more than even sticks and stones, as the old saying goes. So this is not just a historical incident, it is something which can happen in our lives also. So how do we make sense of such situations? So we look at the broader context of Srimad Bhagavatam. The Bhagavatam is spoken to Parikshit Maharaj by Shukdev Goswami. And it has one purpose. At one level, it is to help Parikshit Maharaj remember Krishna. However, there are hundreds and hundreds of pastimes of Krishna which could be told to help him remember Krishna. But in many ways, Shukdev Goswami selects those pastimes which will help Parikshit Maharaj to focus on Krishna the most. At one level, Parikshit Maharaj has been victimized. And how has he been victimized? He has been a virtuous ruler. And Bhagavatam itself describes how virtuous, fearless, glorious he was. At the end, that Kali himself, the cosmic person who was going to be the celestial person, demoniac celestial person who is going to control the whole subsequent age, that person is stopped by Parikshit Maharaj. And yet, that Parikshit Maharaj is felled for a minor infraction and is cursed to die within 7 days. So when this happens, naturally within us, there is that question we rise. This is so unfair. You see, most of the times, even when we are responsible for a situation, it is our mistakes that we have created that have caused the situation. Still, we don't want to bear the consequences. As it is said that success has many parents, and failure is always born an orphan. So failure, when somebody knows that this child is glorious, everybody wants to claim that child. When Krishna goes from Vrindavan to Mathura, and that time the Yadus say, you are our child, you should stay with us. So Nanda Maharaj hears about this and his heart is broken. And still he says, he doesn't want Krishna to leave. But then he says, almost like laughing, sometimes you have to laugh to stop ourselves from crying. And like that, Nanda Maharaj says, it is our fortune that great people, Jiva Goswami explained that this great people is being used sarcastically. And great people like the Yadus are claiming as their own son, our son. So success is many parents, but failure is born an orphan. Like an unwanted child is cast away. So like that, uh, nobody wants to take responsibility for failure, even when we are responsible for it. But when we have made no mistake, or when we have made a very small mistake, and a huge amount of blame is apportioned on us, it becomes unbearable. So that thought at a human level would have been nagging, tormenting Parikshit Maharaj. And every pastime in the Bhagavatam, or every major pastime, is about that theme, that bad things happen to good people. And so it starts with if we consider the major pastimes. In the fourth canto, we have Dhruva. Now, child is considered safest at home, surrounded by one's parents. And there, Dhruva is grievously insulted. Then, if we consider the pastime, Vritrasur, Chitraketu comes Vritrasur. Now, he is traveling across the universe looking for saintly people to associate with and glorifying Krishna with them. And he sees Shiva and Parvati and he laughs. It is an appreciation, in amazement, not in derision. And he suddenly cursed to become a demon. In seventh canto, Prahlad is doing nothing except worshipping the Lord. And his own father wants to kill him. At least Dhruva's father didn't do anything. His stepmother insulted him. Yet his own father is out to kill him. Then we go to the eighth canto. We have Bali Maharaj surrendering himself to Krishna, to Vamana over there. So at least suffering is bearable. Amid suffering, we can turn toward Krishna if we feel that, okay, the suffering is coming from someone else and I take shelter of Krishna. But when the suffering seems to be coming from Krishna himself, then where do we turn to shelter? To look shelter, look for shelter. So it is Bali Maharaj turns towards Krishna, to Vamandev. And Vamandev, Bali Maharaj gives everything in charity, and Vamandev demands more and takes everything away from him. In the ninth canto, Mother Sita stays faithful to Lord Ram despite all his threats and allurements. And then Lord Ram subjects her to a fire test. And then eventually, on an unsubstantiated accusation, sends her away. In the 10th canto, the gopis leave everything. They risk infamy and not just social criticism, but social ruin when they leave their homes and go to be with Krishna in the middle of the night. And what does Krishna do? Krishna leaves them and goes away. At that time itself, Krishna leaves them and goes away. And eventually, Krishna leaves Vrindavan and goes away. He promises them he will come back, but apparently at one level he never comes back. At least in the narrative of the Bhagavatam. So, and the, so like that, each of these incidents seems to be worse and worse and worse. What is going on in life? And then on the top of it is this incident. It's one thing when bad things happen to good people, but it's far worse when good people do bad things. It's bad things happening to good people seems unfair. But so there are broadly two concepts, two notions of evil in the world. There is what is the natural evil, and there is moral evil. Natural evil means that, as I said, bad things happen which is unfair. So by the arrangement of nature, by some cause beyond ourselves. So natural evil is difficult to accept. But still that's okay. But moral evil, where people do bad things, and not just people, but good people do bad things. And we may say at least if that person has been a good person and they do bad thing, well, they should be forgiven for that. And we see that there are good people who do bad things. Bharat Maharaj, it's not actually a bad thing. He's just in the fifth canto. He saves a deer, and a baby deer, and that's not a wrong thing. But what is wrong is that he thinks I have to become the maintainer of the deer, and he gets distracted. And he gets distracted. There are consequences of that. He has to go through two more lifetimes. He has to live as a deer in his next life. So now, in that case, at least, although we could say it was a wrong activity, but at least it was like a sattvic wrong activity. It's a compassionate activity. At least that activity started with compassion. And it was not sinful. But here, this is not just wrong, it seems murderous. What is going on over here? So, at this point, what the Bhagavatam's focus is, it is telling Parikshit Maharaj, you are not alone in facing senseless seeming suffering in the world. There have been many people in the past who have suffered not just like you, but far more than you. Compared to others, what Parikshit Maharaj did was an offense. Not a very serious offense, not certainly an offense that deserved capital punishment, but still putting a dead snake on the neck of a respectable sage was an offense. So there are others who have done far smaller wrongs and have got far greater troubles. And yet they all took shelter of Krishna. Yeah, and in that way they were all delivered. But the most difficult is in the case of the Yadus, do they even take shelter of Krishna? They are with Krishna, but they seem to be neglecting Krishna. And then they fight with each other and then they die. So the point of the Bhagavatam is that if we try to make sense of life in the world with our intelligence, sometimes, many times, we will be able to make sense and we are meant to use our intelligence. But there will be times when we won't be able to make sense of it. Now, this does not mean that we passively accept any injustice that happens, any that around us, or that any iniquity that we are do ourselves do or somebody else to do. Not like that. We see Parikshit Maharaj, to the extent his capacity was there, when Kali was doing atrocities, Parikshit Maharaj opposed it. But sometimes we can neither make sense of what is happening, nor can we stop it from happening. And at such times, we need to simply focus on our relationship with Krishna. And our relationship with Krishna is that we are his parts, we remember him internally, and we serve him externally. So sometimes our service may encompass changing things in the world. If something is wrong, Srila Prabhupada, if you look at his life, he saw that the world was godless and he worked tirelessly to try to address that. He's traveled almost unrelentingly despite his age and health for 11, 12 years. He established Krishna consciousness. Even at practical level, when he came to know that there was something wrong, in the management, in something was wrong in devotee's life. He worked to try to fix that. But eventually, when he recognized that Krishna was calling him back, when he was asked, "Do you have any last desires?" No, Prabhupada could have expressed so many things. Several of Srila Prabhupada's signature projects were just so close to completion. Prabhupada had fought fearlessly, tirelessly to build the Juhu temple. And it was so close to completion. After Prabhupada departed, just a few months later, the Juhu temple was inaugurated. Prabhupada had started translating the Bhagavatam, and thousands and thousands of verses. Prabhupada was in the 10th canto. And it's just, if Prabhupada completed the whole CC within a year, Prabhupada could have completed that. Just if he had been there with us for some time more. But what did Prabhupada reply? Kuch ichha nahi. I have no desire. So what was it? We could say, no, I have worked so hard. Let me complete this. Let me behold this completion. Let me, after I'm doing this for you, I will offer it to Krishna. But Prabhupada accepted Krishna's will. So, surrender to Krishna, I'll conclude with this point, and specifically how to make sense, we'll talk more about tomorrow. But surrender to Krishna has two distinct aspects. One is that there is dependence on Krishna. Like Draupadi, when she saw nothing was working, she just raised her hands. Krishna, I surrender to you. This is the mood of Jesus when he comes to know that he's going to be poisoned. He foresees that. He knows that he's going to be betrayed and killed the next day. So in the Last Supper, he says, "Let thy will be done, not mine." He first says, "Let the cup pass." At that time, the way that sentence was given in different ways. Some people were hanged, but those who were respectable people, they were given a poison cup. That's how Socrates was killed. So Jesus was expecting that. If at all he was going to betray and kill, the poison cup might come. So let the cup pass. But he said that then, let thy will be done, not mine. The next day, reality turned out to be worse. Not just cup, not just hanging, but he was crucified. So crucifixion is among the most painful ways of killing. But there are times when a devotee surrenders and says, let thy will be done. Now the Gita also calls for surrender at the end. Sarvadharman parityajya mamekam sharanam vraja. But Arjuna's surrender is not raising his hands up. Independence. Independence, not independence. But Arjuna's surrender is raising his bow in readiness to fight for Krishna. So Arjuna's surrender is not let thy will be done. It is I will do thy will. It's karishye vachanam tava. I will do your will. So surrender has both these aspects. In our life, in the situations around us, there are some things in our control and there are some things which are not in our control. For the things that are not in our control, we accept them. There is dependence on Krishna. Let thy will be done. I accept whatever is your plan, Krishna. But for what is in our control, there is not acceptance in the sense of just resignation or inactivity, but acceptance of our responsibility to make a difference. So that is, there is Arjuna raising his hands. So we could say there is dependence on Krishna, which is one form of surrender, and diligence for Krishna is another form of surrender. Diligence is whatever is in our capacity to do, we do it wholeheartedly. And Srila Prabhupada was uh, active in spreading Krishna consciousness. He was diligent. He was diligent about the finances, making sure that no Lakshmi was wasted or lost. When we got initially when the devotee wanted to build up a temple in Vrindavan, it was very, very difficult to get cement. And finally, after great difficulty, when they got cement, Prabhupada asked, okay, how many kilograms, how many packets have we got? And Prabhupada was there watching and keeping track. And he was counting those cement bags as if they were gold bags. Why? Because they were so valuable for the service of Krishna. So there was diligence for Krishna. So both these, there's dependence on Krishna and diligence for Krishna. Now, in the Bhagavatam, Parikshit Maharaj has accepted this as the course of event. This is something which is not going to be changed, accepted. Then his mode of surrender is dependence on Krishna. So no matter how unfair what is happening seems to be, we stay sheltered in Krishna. And that is the mood of this particular pastime also. If Krishna himself is demonstrating this has happened, Krishna is not shown to be agitated, infuriated, exasperated. Krishna is peacefully sitting down. Generally, when do you do Achman? No, if you are very agitated, you'll forget. Whatever you just do, you'll forget to do Achman also. Krishna is peaceful. His plan is working in its own way. Now, why his plan worked in that particular way, and how, when this kind of suffering comes, what we can do, we'll talk tomorrow. But broadly, the Bhagavatam's overall mood is to demonstrate surrender to Krishna in the mood of dependence. When things are beyond our control, we accept them graciously. And rather than looking at the unfairness, why is this like this? Why is it not fair? We focus not on unfairness of the events in the world, we focus on the mercifulness of the Lord through even those events. So, how to find Krishna's mercy? That I'll talk tomorrow. I'll summarize. So today I talked about three main points. First is the Bhagavatam is like a movie with Krishna's pastime. There's a trailer in beginning, and each verse is like a verbal photo. And this particular section is describing one of the most heartbreaking and faith challenging pastime. It is Krishna's departure and the departure of his associates also. There and now the specific pictures that are described, specific verses that are described, specific pastimes are described, are for one purpose: to help Parikshit Maharaj accept Krishna's will, whatever it is, no matter how unfair it seems. So, to help him reinforce, not just help him remember Krishna, but remember Krishna in a way that addresses whatever emotional hang-ups might be there within him. It is various pastimes are selected which show how, yes, unfair things have happened to him. Evil is there in the world in some ways, but far more unfair things have happened to people before him, and they have all remained sheltered in Krishna. Therefore, he should also remain sheltered in Krishna. And the broad theme is surrender to Krishna involves both dependence and diligence. So when things are in our control, diligence. When things go beyond our control, dependence. The Bhagavatam is demonstrating how we need to be dependent on Krishna even when nothing seems to make sense. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Are there any questions or comments? Yes, please. Please.
Thank you for this. I like the point that you made about what's within our control and what's beyond our control. So how to draw the line of what is what. Because
Yeah.
sometimes you can think that well it's beyond it's within my control, but then some health issues come up, and oh yeah no it's not. But then hey you're in control of your health to some extent, so it's a little
Yeah.
fuzzy. So how can you ascertain
Yes,
that?
true. So, how do we decide what is in our control and what is beyond our control? Well, in principle, it's easy. Practice. It says, it is said that dharma saratvam nihitam guhaya mahajano yenagata sapanta. That dharma is not so easy to understand. Dharma is here the right thing to do, whether it is from a virtuous perspective or devotional perspective. It is tough to discern. And that's why we look at the examples of great souls. So there are two things that are said. Dharma saratvam nihitam guhayam. We turn inward. Dharma is hidden deep within the cave of the heart. While it is said, dharma, dharmam tu sakshat bhagavatam pranitam. That dharma is what is given by the Lord, that is demonstrated, is his teachings in scripture. But specifically how those teachings are to be applied in our life. We have to turn inward deeply. And then Mahajano Yenagata Sabanta. We look at the great souls, look at their lives. Uh, if we have access to devotees, we take their guidance. But broadly, these are three sources. We study scripture, We look within, we look within our heart, and we look at the examples of great souls. And overall, in general, we could say that any activity we can keep endeavoring unlimitedly. And maybe right now it is not in my control, eventually it may come in my control. Well, that is true. So, a devotee is fixed in purpose but is flexible in process. That means that our purpose is always to serve Krishna, to glorify Krishna, to raise our consciousness towards Him, and to help others raise their consciousness towards Him. But sometimes the particular activity we be doing may not be working. Srila Prabhupada is fixed in carrying out the instruction of his spiritual master, just share Krishna Bhakti. But Prabhupada was very flexible. He tried so many things. In India itself, he tried so many things. He tried the Back to God magazine, then he worked with his god brothers, he tried to start the League of Devotees, he tried to get Bhagavatam written, he responded to current events with Back to God magazine, through his journey to other planets. He was trying whatever could work. Even in America, when he came, he was trying various things. Some things worked, some things didn't work. So the metaphor could be like the Ganga moving toward the ocean. So the river always keeps moving toward the ocean. If this is the path, it will go along this path. This path is blocked, it will go up, it will go up, it will go down, it will go left, it will go right. Somehow or the other, eventually it will erode and go on. Somehow it will keep moving forwards. So for us, if we keep our purpose in mind, my purpose is to serve Krishna, then in this particular situation, how important is it for me to serve Krishna through this particular service only, or in this particular place only, or in this particular, then we have time, place, circumstance. So Desh Kala Patra. So sometimes we may change that. So if we focus on our purpose, then what is in our control and what is not in our control can become relatively clearer. That okay, this I've tried enough. You could say I can keep trying forever. But if this is not working, maybe this is not the way Krishna wants me to serve. Krishna wants me to serve in some other way. So we try to improve. If our health is not, if we have poor health, we can say we try to improve our health, and we put in full endeavor in doing that. But then we don't reduce our life only to the improvement of the health. We try something. If it works, well and good. If we given it a reasonable try, it's not working. Then we accept that this is not working. We try something else. But throughout it all, whether we are working for our health or not, we are working for Krishna. So our focus is serving Krishna, and health is a resource for serving Krishna. If we have that resource, we can serve Him better. If we don't have that, still we can remember Him. It's tougher, but it's still possible. So all of us, we need, in one sense, to serve Krishna more effectively. We need resources. We may need wealth. We may need health. We may need assistance. We may need institutional support. We may need, you could even say, reputation. A devotee wants to do some service, and there are others who, the devotee has good reputation, others can support. So how much should a devotee seek those things? Well, yes, if they can help us in our service, we can seek those things. But seeking those things shouldn't become our full-time obsession. And seeking those things shouldn't consume us emotionally so much that if we don't get that thing, we think, what is the use of serving Krishna? How can I serve Krishna? No, with or without that, I'm still going to serve Krishna. Does that answer your question? Thank you. You ask question before we stop. Okay, okay, so I have written a few books during the pandemic. I'll just tell about these books. Basically, Srila Prabhupada gave us the Bhagavad Gita as it is, and he told study scripture from various perspectives. So I've written four compilations of Bhagavad Gita from four different perspectives. So this is Bhagavad Gita for daily mindfulness, 365 reflections on the Bhagavad Gita as different verses. So much of what I talk today, the broad themes are from the first section, which is on facing adversities, then how to resist temptation, how to not be ritualistic or mechanical, but to be more devotional in our activities, how to be less judgmental and more sensitive. There are about 50, 60 articles on each of these things. Like that, there are 365 articles, a very accessible way to apply the Gita. If you want to study the Gita a little bit more in detail, these two books are a Gita study series. This is based on, it follows the mood of Baldev Vidyabhushan's commentary on the Gita. So this study the Gita from a rational perspective. There are about 100 articles with 80 diagrams illustrating them, and it is, what exactly is karma? Is everything destined? If does God control everything? If He controls everything, do we really have free will? If the modes are the doers and we are not, then why are we responsible? Why we are responsible for our actions? So questions like these are answered. The questions that may come when we read the Gita with a rational approach. And so this studies the Gita from a relational perspective. Is this follows the mode of Vishwanath Thakur's commentary on the Gita. The Gita is not just philosophy, but it is actually Krishna's love for Arjuna expressed through the medium of philosophy, and by extension, divinity's love for humanity. So, how the Gita can nourish us spiritually in our bhakti. If you want to study that, this book is there for that. And this is 365 quotes inspired by the Bhagavad Gita. So, one of the themes that I spoke today is ask not why bad things happen to good people, ask what good people do when bad things happen to them. So that is the overall theme of the Bhagavatam. So that's based on 418 the Gita. So like that, that's the 65 course. And it's a very accessible way to share spirituality with colleagues, family, friends who may not be devotees, who may not be interested in reading a book. Just keep this on your home on a desktop and read a quote, and then that may trigger their interest, and then you can have a spiritual discussion. So all these four are available. If any of you would like, then you can have them, and I can sign also. And if you take the four set, it's also available at a discount. Thank you very much. ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की, श्री प्रभुपाद की, गौर भक्त वृंद की, गौर प्रेम